Alright fellas, so in this video I'm going to talk about loneliness, specifically if it's something that people should embrace or if that people should avoid. Right off the bat, I am going to say that I think loneliness, there needs to be a balance between time to yourself, inner peace, time to discover yourself, or just time to just relax and not be bothered with. At times there's also the moments where you want to socialize, you want to go out, social, be around the people, talk to people. I think that's definitely part of human behavior where sometimes we just want to be alone. Other times we want to be out with family, with friends, or just even meeting new people. I think the issue nowadays is that there's this disconnect between interpersonal communication where not many people go out. Many people stay inside because they want to because their time is busy on social media, or there are people who are more introverts, or there are people where they just don't want to be bothered with, and that's something that I get. However, there are also people who want to get out there, despite their introverts. They still want to go out, but they just don't know how to. They don't know who to reach out to because it's, well, let's face it, it is kind of hard to make friends as we get older. When we're in school, we're just surrounded by people, and depending on the discipline of study that you choose, it's it's hard because sometimes you spend all of your time working, studying, and no time to, well, perhaps even for yourself. I know back in the day, I used to work 10-hour shifts at a warehouse, and don't get me wrong, I worked, when I got home and I slept, just to wake up and go to work again. And I know that's a routine that's not uncommon. It's just something that takes up a lot of your time and doesn't leave time to do anything else. Anyways, I want to go ahead and start weighing the arguments here. You know, the arguments for embracing loneliness, how you can use it for your advantage, and of course arguments against loneliness. You know, where it could pose some sort of a risk to yourself. And at the end, I want to share again my point of view of loneliness and how how it affected me, because I am also in that loop where I talk to people, but there are days where I just don't talk to people. I'm in the middle of a grind. But yeah, starting with arguments, embracing loneliness. If you're always, hanging out with people, if you're always doing something with others, or you just don't have time to yourself, then you wouldn't have time to understand, to get to know who you are, and have some time to connect yourself with your own values and thoughts. And I think this is important because there are times where people just ask, like, hey, like, I don't know who I am, or I don't know where I'm going. I think taking some time to self reflect, or set some time aside to discover yourself, I think it's something that we should definitely do every once in a while, to not only understand the path that we went to, but also understand the path that we walked and to where it's going. Right? It's definitely something that we should keep in mind when traveling, when being alone, just inner peace. I would say the second argument that I've seen for myself, apart from self discovery, is I think creativity. Like, being at home alone is a whole different, it's a whole different ball game as opposed to being home and you have people around you. I'm not saying that it's a huge negative having people around you and having family around you, and having people that that respect and love you, and treat you in a certain way that's positive. It's something that, yeah, that's priceless. But at the same time, being alone in your thoughts, being, having this time to speak to yourself, even though it may sound crazy, even having a time to sit down and lock in without any distractions is something that doesn't have a price. I mean, to think of it like this: when you're in a shower, many people tend to sing, many people tend to talk to themselves, or many people just sit there and enjoy the water running out their body, and just blanking out when you're in the middle of the shower. Why? Because it's that time for yourself. It's that time to be yourself without anybody around you, and it's something that that we don't experience if if the house is full of everybody else, right? When you have the house to yourself, there's a certain there's a certain level of comfort. There's a certain level of freedom that you have that you wouldn't otherwise experience with if the house is full of everybody else. The third argument here would be uh, I think resilience. Being comfortable around yourself, being able to just be in your head without going crazy. And what helped me in this, what helped me be used to myself, love myself, etc. Is well, being busy. One is striving for the next thing, striving for a goal, striving for something attainable, and creating life experiences for yourself. I think this level of resilience is a bit too higher up there because you have to prove to yourself that you can do certain things without the need of everybody else. The idea is to work and grind until you reach a certain goal that you have set your mind to. And this resilience is definitely something that I have worked on when it came to working long hours, studying long hours. A combination of this in life builds character, and I think that's something that this argument is trying to communicate. Being alone, uh, with yourself, and always in independence. I think it's something that it's definitely a positive when it comes to embracing loneliness. So I'm gonna transition to the cons and people should avoid loneliness. I'm thinking that the first one is I think it poses a certain risk to ourselves when it comes to a certain level of anxiety, a certain level of depression, if we're not one obviously surrounded by other people that we can socialize with. We're not surrounded by people we can socialize with. If we're not surrounded by people who respect and love us, I think there's a level of risk, of a mental risk that we pose to ourselves. And I'm also thinking that we should be busy striving towards something when we're alone to keep our mind off of the negatives that loneliness can bring. Personally, haven't felt much of depression, anxiety when I'm alone. I only feel them when I'm not doing something. When you sit down and you're on your phone or you're on your laptop, computer, or what have you, and you're not being productive. I think productivity is something that I think I'm going to talk about in a different video. I think being productive is something that has brought peace to my life because it's something that I know that I'm taking the time to be better, to work on something, to work on for example, like work on my body if I'm working out, work on YouTube videos, editing, or doing something as a passion project, right? Or doing something on the side that that even though it's not going to yield anything of actual value, maybe like money, but it's something that you enjoy and it's something that takes your mind off of things. Like that this project is something that you build and something that you're working on, and I don't know how to say it, but it brings a certain peace to yourself. Thinking the second argument here of avoiding loneliness is that since we're wired for since we should be like social, and being alone for a while can be harming to us. I think there's also a level of going back to that one topic, that one idea of if you don't use it, you lose it. If you're not constantly practicing your social skills, it's definitely harder to reconnect after a long time of just not hanging out with people. I think after a while, like the third one I would want to go into is I think being alone could lead to negative thoughts. It could misguide you and think like, hey, like maybe I'm not meant to have friends, or maybe I'm not good enough to have friends. Honestly, like I've seen a lot more positives than negatives, personally when it comes to loneliness. But the arguments for loneliness is something that comes to mind right now. But overall, I do think that. But overall, I do think that there should be a balance between being lonely and not, right. In my personal experience, if I'm always productive, if I'm focused on doing something, and I have the space and privacy to work on something, I think that's something that I wouldn't want to trade, because it just lets me be it just lets me be productive. I think productivity is definitely something that I value, and something that I know that it'll pay off. But yeah, that's pretty much my idea when it comes to loneliness. Uh, Personally, I'm for it. Um, uh, I do have friends every now and then that call me. Every now and then I hang out with them. Not so much in person anymore, because I do have a busy life. But every now and then we hop on Discord and play a match or two on Call of Duty. And of course, being on a Discord server would definitely help you, stay in contact with everybody else. But overall, like I'm liking my life. I'm not when it comes to being social. I guess it depends who am I around. I wouldn't. I was never always the social person, but I think recently I've started to become one. So I'm comfortable transitioning to becoming that social person, but also wouldn't mind being alone. Right? It's important to understand. It's important to know that you could be comfortable with yourself and not always have the need of people around you. But yeah, I do want to leave behind. I do want to leave behind some tips on being comfortable being alone. Number one would be definitely being productive. Um, productivity that productivity definitely comes with if there's a finished goal, right, and how feasible that goal is. It's definitely we should keep our goals realistic when it comes to striving for a certain thing. Don't expect too much out of something. It, it could be that you know it, if you expect nothing and get everything, perhaps that something was definitely something that you should have had. Or I think it's something that's a very powerful quote that people should know. Like, if you expect nothing and get everything, it could be destiny, or it could be meant for you. So yeah, that's my first tip: is just being productive. Keep the goals reasonable, right? The second tip is definitely having that level of privacy for yourself. Uh, the privacy for creativity is the second tip. Uh, when you have this space for yourself and you're comfortable being around it, and you're not distracted by I guess the outside world, including social media, including the people that live in your home. I'm thinking this paves the way to creativity, or at least a sense of freedom, because you can say and do anything you want without anybody judging you. I think that's the most important part about being alone, having this privacy, because you can say and do whatever you want, and that's creativity without being judged. And of course, many people have this fear of like people having negative point, having a negative reply or response to whatever they say. I know that's something important for some people, but you wouldn't otherwise have that when you're alone. So that's something to consider. And the last tip I want to leave you guys is, I would say I would say keeping busy. Um, I suppose this ties in with the. I suppose this tip ties into the first one, just keeping busy. You can't think about like you can't be thinking about negative things when you're always busy doing something else, right? Being alone is something that could be seen as a negative, but really shouldn't. But yeah, those are 3 tips I want to share with you guys, along with the arguments for and against loneliness. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I will be reading you guys if I get any. Other than that, yeah, I think my next video would be about productivity. I think that's something that I talked about a lot in this one, so I'm gonna go ahead and make some time to discuss about that one. All right then, fellas, see ya.
Yeah. Oh, I won. I didn't know it was an actual race. Yeah, I thought you were just racing for time.